Hey everyone, it's so good to see you again. In today's video, we're going to dive right into restoring a barely alive orchid using a simple homemade fertilizer. Stick with me till the end, and let's bring this orchid back to life together. Let's get started. I recently got this orchid from a friend who told me they had already tried every method they could find, but nothing seemed to work. And judging by the condition of the plant, it looks like they might have followed the wrong kind of tutorial, which is where we step in to help. Now, at first glance, you can see the leaves are heavily drooped, giving the impression that maybe it just needs a bit of water. But if you look closer, the situation is far worse than it seems. The leaves have lost their firmness, showing clear signs of stress, and there's a good chance the roots underneath are already starting to fail. This is not just a thirsty orchid. It's one in critical condition that needs a proper revival approach. We're going to start by carefully removing the orchid from its pot so we can get a closer look at the roots. And oh boy, this is where the real problem shows itself. The moment the orchid comes out, you can already see the root system is in pretty bad shape. Some of the roots look shriveled and dried. Others are mushy and dark from rot, and only a few seem to be holding on with a bit of firmness. This explains why the leaves are drooping. The plant simply can't take in enough water and nutrients through damaged roots. Because most of the leaves are no longer able to provide proper nutrients for the plant, we're going to carefully remove them as well. These leaves may still look green on the surface, but if you touch them, you'll notice they're soft, wrinkled, and no longer serving their purpose. Now we're going to carefully remove all of the old substrate from the plant. Take your time with this step because the roots are already fragile and we don't want to cause extra damage. Gently work the bark and debris away with your fingers, loosening it bit by bit until the roots are completely free. If you notice any pieces clinging too tightly, you can dip the root system in a bowl of clean water to soften the material, making it easier to peel away. By clearing out the old substrate, we're giving the orchid a fresh start, free from any compacted or decayed matter that could block airflow or hold too much moisture. Next, we're going to take a clean pair of scissors or pruning shears and carefully trim away any of the roots that are already dried out or rotten. You'll recognize them easily. They usually feel hollow, look dark brown or black, and sometimes even squish when you press them. Healthy roots, on the other hand, are firm, plump, and usually have a green or silvery color. Work slowly and make sure each cut is clean, avoiding unnecessary damage to the healthy sections. While we're at it, you might also notice the old flower spikes still attached to the orchid. Since the blooms are already gone, keeping the spike will only drain energy from the plant that could otherwise be used to grow strong roots and healthy leaves. After trimming away the dead roots and removing the old flower spike, it's time to give the orchid a gentle wash. This step is important because it helps remove any leftover debris, dust, or bits of old substrate that may still be clinging to the plant. Using a soft spray of fresh water, carefully rinse the roots and the base of the plant. Make sure the water pressure isn't too strong. You want to clean the orchid without causing any stress or damage to the delicate roots. Take your time and rotate the plant as you spray, ensuring every part gets a refreshing rinse. Once you've finished rinsing the orchid, the next step is to gently dry it off. Using a clean towel, rag, or even soft tissues, carefully pat the leaves and roots. The goal here isn't to make the plant bone dry, but rather to remove the excess water sitting on the surface. Now that our orchid is cleaned and ready, Let's move on to preparing a simple homemade fertilizer. For this, we're going to use an orange. What we really need is the skin, as it's packed with natural oils, nutrients, and a bit of acidity that can help refresh the plant. Carefully peel the orange, making sure to keep the skin in fairly large pieces. Once you've removed it all, take a knife or scissors and cut the peel into smaller chunks. Breaking it down like this will make it easier to release its nutrients once we combine it with water. The fruit itself you can eat or set aside for a snack. The star of this step is really the peel. Once you've finished cutting the orange peel into small pieces, place them all into a clean jar or container. Next, add in 3 tablespoons of rice. The rice will act as a natural booster. It's full of carbohydrates and a small amount of protein that, when broken down in water, provide gentle energy for the orchid's roots. After that, pour in about 500 milliliters of hot water. The heat helps soften the orange peel and begin drawing out its oils and nutrients, while also releasing the starches from the rice. Now, give everything a thorough stir. You want the rice and peel to move around well, so that the water begins absorbing all those beneficial compounds. Once everything is well mixed, place the lid securely on the jar. Wrap the container in a clean towel. Now, we'll let it rest for about 30 minutes. After about 30 minutes, go ahead and unwrap the towel and carefully remove the lid. By now, you'll notice the water has changed color. It should look slightly cloudy from the rice starch and may carry a faint golden or citrus tint from the orange peel. You might also catch a mild, refreshing aroma of orange mixed with a warm, earthy scent from the rice. Give the mixture one more gentle stir, just to make sure all the nutrients are evenly distributed. Then take a fine strainer or mesh and carefully pour the liquid through it, filtering out all the solid pieces of rice and peel that didn't break down. What you're left with is a clean, nutrient-rich solution, smooth in texture and ready to be used for your orchid. Next, prepare a clean tissue or soft cloth and dip it into the freshly strained solution. Make sure it's thoroughly soaked, but not dripping excessively. Start by gently wiping the surface of the leaves, moving in smooth strokes from the base toward the tip. This not only helps the plant absorb the nutrients, but also removes dust, dirt, and any small pests that may be clinging to the leaf surface. Be sure to get both the top and underside of each leaf, since that's where the plant breathes and absorbs moisture. Now grab yourself a clean container that's just the right size to comfortably fit your orchid. Place the orchid gently inside, making sure the roots and base are resting naturally without bending or crowding. Slowly begin to pour in the nutrient solution we've just prepared. Take your time with this. Pour gradually around the plant so the liquid spreads evenly. What you want is for the roots and lower part of the stem to be submerged. Once everything is positioned correctly, leave the plant in this bath for about 25 minutes. During this time, the orchid will drink in the enriched solution, giving it a much-needed boost of strength and hydration. After 25 minutes, our orchid should have taken in a good amount of those nutrients from the soak. Carefully lift it out of the container, letting the excess solution drip away for a few seconds. Now, take a clean tissue or soft cloth and gently brush along the leaves and roots one more time. This final wipe helps remove any residue left behind while also coating the plant with a thin layer of nutrients. Work slowly and with care, making sure not to press too hard on the delicate roots. Afterward, we're going to protect the orchid by applying cinnamon powder. Cinnamon works as a natural antifungal and antibacterial agent, helping to seal any cuts or wounds from trimming and preventing infections that could harm the plant. Take a small, clean paintbrush and dip it lightly into the powder. Remember, you only need a little, not too much. Gently brush the cinnamon onto the trimmed areas of the roots or stem, making sure the entire cut surface is covered with a thin layer. Now we're going to prepare a new home for our orchid. Start by choosing a pot with clear drainage holes. This is very important because orchids don't like to sit in water. Good drainage allows the excess moisture to escape, reducing the risk of root rot and keeping the plant healthy. Begin by filling about half of the pot with pine bark. Pine bark is an excellent medium because it creates air pockets around the roots, mimicking the natural environment orchids grow in. Once you have the base layer in, carefully position your orchid in the center of the pot, making sure the roots spread out naturally and aren't cramped together. When the plant feels secure, gently add in the remaining pine bark, little by little, around the roots. Use your hand or a small tool to guide the bark into any empty spaces, but avoid packing it down too tightly. Orchids need airflow just as much as they need moisture. Once everything is in place, lightly press around the plant to stabilize it. Now we're going to give our orchid some extra support by using something called a steel base or stake. Orchids, especially after repotting, can sometimes be a little unstable, and this support will help them stand tall as the roots settle in. Carefully insert the stake into the pot, pushing it down gently into the bark until it feels firm and secure. Make sure not to pierce or damage any of the roots while doing this. Slide it in along the edge of the pot, if possible. Once the stake is in place, guide the orchid so that it leans lightly against it. You can use a soft tie, garden clip, or even a piece of twine to fasten the orchid to the stake. Be careful not to tie it too tightly. You want it snug enough to hold the plant upright, but loose enough so the stem isn't squeezed. Next, we're going to cover the top layer with moss. Moss plays an important role. It helps retain just the right amount of moisture around the surface while still allowing the roots to breathe. This creates a soft cushion on top of the bark, keeping the orchid's growing environment balanced and comfortable. Gently spread the moss evenly across the surface of the pot, making sure not to pack it down too tightly. You want it to sit loosely so air can still circulate through the medium. As you place the moss, tuck it lightly around the base of the orchid to help hold everything in place and keep the roots protected. This finishing layer not only helps with moisture control, but also gives the pot a cleaner, more natural look, almost like the orchid is growing straight from a forest floor. Now we'll give the orchid one final watering using the solution we prepared earlier. Slowly pour it around the base, letting it trickle through the moss and bark so the roots can soak up those last nutrients. Be gentle here. You don't want to flood it, just enough to moisten the medium evenly. Once that's done, we're going to cover the entire pot with another container that has drainage holes on top. Think of this as a protective dome. It helps maintain humidity around the orchid while still allowing fresh air to circulate. The drainage holes are important because they prevent excess moisture from being trapped inside, which could lead to rot. This setup will create a stable little environment where the orchid can rest and adjust to its new home, giving the roots the perfect balance of air and moisture as they start to establish themselves. After 4 weeks, you'll start to notice some exciting changes in your orchid. At first glance, the leaves may look a little firmer compared to when we began. That slight droop that showed the plant was struggling is now replaced by a bit more strength and structure. The leaves are standing more upright, and their color is deeper, showing signs that the orchid is slowly regaining energy. If you look closely at the roots, especially near the base of the plant, you might spot tiny green or silvery root tips beginning to emerge. These new root tips are a clear sign that the orchid is actively growing again and successfully adapting to its new potting medium. The moss and pine bark are doing their job, keeping enough moisture for root development while still allowing airflow to prevent rot. The overall plant also looks fresher. The moss on top helps regulate humidity around the roots, so instead of drying out or staying soggy, the conditions are just right for the orchid to breathe and slowly rebuild its strength. You might even see a slight gloss return to the leaves, which is often a subtle indication that the plant is taking in the nutrients we provided through the homemade solution. Another positive change you'll notice is that the stem base feels sturdier. It's not as fragile or soft as before, meaning the plant is stabilizing itself and redirecting energy into new growth. Depending on your orchid, you may even see the earliest sign of a new leaf pushing through from the center, though sometimes this happens a little later. This is a very critical stage, because from this point forward, our orchid survival depends on consistent routine care. Think of it like building a foundation. Everything we've done so far prepare the plant, but it's the daily and weekly attention that will determine if it fully recovers or slips back into decline. First, let's talk about watering. Orchids don't like to sit in soggy conditions, but they also can't thrive in dryness. The goal here is balance. Every few days, check the moisture level of the pine bark and moss. If the bark feels dry and the moss is just starting to lose its dampness, that's your cue to water. When you water, pour slowly until you see liquid draining from the holes at the bottom. This ensures the roots are fully hydrated without staying waterlogged. Next is misting. A light misting around the leaves and the moss layer will keep humidity levels stable. This is especially important if you live in a dry environment. Misting also refreshes the plant, helping the leaves absorb a small amount of moisture directly while keeping the root zone moist but airy. Now let's not forget feeding. Every 1 to 2 weeks, prepare a small batch of the same homemade solution we used earlier. This way the orchid keeps getting a steady supply of natural nutrients. You don't need much. Just a light misting and a gentle pour around the roots is enough. Overfeeding can overwhelm the plant, so always remember moderation. Routine care also means observation. Keep an eye on the leaves. Are they firm, or are they starting to droop again? Watch the roots. Do you see more green tips forming, or are they drying out? These small details will tell you exactly what your orchid needs. And lastly, make sure the orchid stays in an open, well-ventilated area with indirect sunlight. Too much direct sunlight can scorch the fragile leaves, while too little light will slow down growth. A bright windowsill or a shaded outdoor area usually works perfectly. And there you have it, our orchid's journey from a weak and struggling plant to one that's now showing new signs of life. With a little patience, the right homemade care, and a consistent routine, even the most fragile orchids can bounce back and surprise you with their resilience. I hope you found this video helpful and inspiring. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to give it a like, share it with fellow orchid lovers, and subscribe so you won't miss the next restoration journey. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.